In better news, Team USA finished on top at the Tokyo Olympics, and the athletes closed out the games in a show of unity. James Longman has the latest from Tokyo.
They were an Olympics like no other, and as Tokyo's games came to a close this weekend, Team USA pulling ahead and leading the medal count. The US men and women's basketball teams on top of the world yet again, both dominating the games and taking home the gold. US women's volleyball serving up defeat to Brazil for their first ever Olympic gold. And Allyson Felix taking an astonishing 11th Olympic medal of her career, making her the most decorated American track and field athlete in history. These games plagued by issues, but Tokyo succeeded in the end, officially closing its Olympics with a vibrant celebration, saying "Arigato," thank you, blazed across the sky. Hundreds of athletes marching into a very different closing ceremony, together, not separated by country as is usually done. Four-time Olympian and javelin thrower Cara Winger proudly carrying the flag for the USA. Marathoner Molly Seidel receiving the last medal for the US live at the ceremony, a bronze. And get this, it was only her third marathon ever. And from one famous tower to another, Tokyo's organisers officially passing the Olympic flag to Paris, where the next Summer Games is set to be held. Fans and Olympians celebrating as France's elite air team flew past the Eiffel Tower.
And James Longman joins me live from Tokyo now. Hi, James. You said it right there at the top of the piece. These were some Olympic Games like no other. So how do you think the Tokyo Olympics will be remembered?
Well, Diane, they didn't start very well. Not on the best note anyway. Most Japanese really didn't want them to go ahead. It's hard to believe, but 2 weeks ago, we were at the opening ceremony and there were protests on the street. People were worried about COVID. But I think it's been a quiet success, really. The Japanese have seen their own athletes do really well on the medals table. And COVID has, by and large, been kept under control inside the Olympic bubble. Just 436 cases, 29 of those athletes. I think we're going to have to wait and see what the wider impact is, of course, over and above just the Olympics, the impact on Tokyo in a larger sense, because cases are still going up and we have the Paralympics to come. But COVID aside, for me, there were other big themes here at these Olympics, which I really kind of did sort of see front and centre. One of them about money in sport, particularly because people couldn't go along to these Olympics. The Japanese were largely shut out. The idea of who decides how elite sport is put on. The fight, if you like, about whether or not the IOC had pushed Japan into putting these games on when they didn't want to in the first place. The idea that, you know, Lindsay in Ohio, if she decides to share something on Twitter and it gets removed immediately because the rights holder has an issue with it. These sorts of things, I think, were big themes here. Doping here. I mean, a lot of athletes were angry that the Russians were able to compete. They competed as the Russian Olympic Committee, but they still kind of wore their tracksuits with their national colours on it. The head of the US anti-doping agency called that a farce. So that will be something that Paris will have to think about in 2024. And the weather, it was so hot here, Diane. So a Summer Olympics in our warming climate. We've just heard about wildfires all around the world. Here in Tokyo, it felt like we were experiencing wildfires. I mean, I went down to the skate park, incredible new sport, watching teenagers compete and win medals, but it was hotter than the sun. So a lot of huge themes for these Olympics over and above COVID, but by and large, I think a success.
Yeah, a lot of conversations sparked from these games, that's for sure. So, James, let's do this one last time. Where does the final medal count stand?
So, the US has 39 gold medals. That's from 113 medals overall. They are at the top of the table. They're always at the top of the table. They have been since 1996. That's 7 consecutive games. I have to say, though, they haven't done amazingly well by US standards. In Rio, they won 46 gold medals. So there's something to be said perhaps about maybe the time difference was an issue for the US athletes, because if this were a normal Olympics outside of COVID, they would have been able to get here well ahead of time. But because of COVID, they only had those 5 days, so they couldn't set up their training camps and to properly acclimatise before competing. Other countries, especially in Asia and Oceania, did manage to do that. And a last message for you here, Diane, the women, they carried these games off. If it had only been Team USA as a women's competing team, they would have placed 4th on the medals table. How about that, Diane?
All right. Girl power. James Longman live in Tokyo. James, always great to have you. Thank you. And a big hats off to all of our athletes who overcame so much to compete and definitely made this country proud. James, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.